We are live now.
Okay, thank you, sir. So, shall I start, sir? Start?
Vinita ma'am, please wait. We are yet to share the live link with the students.
Okay, ma'am.
Recording in progress.
Akshita ma'am, let me know when should I start. So accordingly, I will start with my session.
Ma'am, I have shared the link in VIT placements. I think we can start now.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, thank you so much.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayuri sir, and thank you, Akshita ma'am, for this overall coordination. So now I would like to start with my session for the pre-placements. So before that, very good morning to everyone. Before starting with my sessions, first I would like to introduce myself. So students, I'm Professor Vinita Bandiwat. I'm the faculty of Information Technology Department, and today I'll be conducting pre-placement sessions on networking, basically computer networking, which is completely a different domain as considered or in the field of engineering. Now, when I'm saying it as in different field or a different domain, it is not specific to any branches, but it is common to all the branches of engineering. Like all the branches we have in our institute, EXTC, electronics, biomedical, INFT, computers, for all the students, this acts as a different domain. Okay. Now you have already started with the sessions on coding. I'm pretty sure about that. You must have started with C, C++, Java, Python, operating systems, and so many different domains. So now in these 3 days of session, I would like you to introduce and I would like you to give a very quick highlights or the importance of this domain in the engineering. Apart from that, we will also be discussing like which students can opt for this particular domain. Along with that, I'll also be guiding you on what are the industrial requirements and why this domain acts as a very different domain now. If I'm not wrong, I can just ask you to all the participants who are present. I can ask you like if you want to check, you can just go on the browser and you can identify or you can just search in the browser like the requirements for this particular domain of engineers have been increased and it will have a very sharp increase in the coming days. Now, why there is a sharp increase and why there are such huge requirements? Of course, that you will be coming to know when we are at the end of this 3 days session. Okay. I'm not directly going to start with what are the basics or anything about that. First, I'll give you a quick highlights of the importance of this domain and what are the future prospects of this domain. For any type of queries or questions, I have also dropped my email ID or for any types of questions, you can please put it in the chat section. So at the end of the session, I'll try, maximum I'll try to answer all your questions. Okay. So let us start with our session. Once again, I'm greeting you all for this computer networking domain. Now, this is the basic structure of the plan that I have planned for your entire 3 days of session. So directly, I'm not going to start with some very high fundamentals in this subject, because maybe some must have cleared it, some must have not studied it yet. So you need to have some basic concepts very clear about this, because when you go to interviews, or when you go to placements, or when you're trying to particularly grasp this particular job, they don't ask you any high fundamental. They try to first understand like how much is your basic concepts clear about this domain. Now, why they try to understand this thing, I'll tell you. Because when we are coming to, like, let me say, some core fields, like, let me say, let it be an embedded, or let me be a computer networking, or let me say it's a cyber security, or let me say some different core technology. So when it is core technology at an initial level, they don't put you at a very high part of the project. They try to understand that what is your level of understanding in this particular domain. Accordingly, you will be trained. Accordingly, the projects will be handled by you, and so on. So whenever you're trying to crack that initial part of this particular interviews, the basic concepts must be very, very, very clear. So what I'll be trying to do is I'll be trying to clear the basic concepts very clearly. So if any type of questions or any type of uh, interview things are asked on this particular questions, you must be very probably very easy to answer all the things. So this is the basic structure that I have planned. Of course, there can be plus minus into this, but we'll see it on later. So what I'll be doing is first I'll be giving you the importance of this domain, because now this is my computer networking is my area of research basically. It's my area of interest in which I'm working into, and probably I find a glitch here that many students are not aware of this domain or the importance of this domain. What they feel is like this is something which is not that required in the industries, but you're completely wrong. This would be my statement. This is completely wrong, because when you are coming to industries, they do ask you this particular domain plays a 24 by 7 role in the industries. Now, why it is a 24 by 7 role in the industries, that I'll be discussing when I'm discussing about the importance. And after that, I'll be giving you some basics about the domain. So when I'm giving you the basics about domain, it will be basically what is the initial part you need to have, and how you will go with this particular domain, that we'll be discussing. One second. Okay. Once you have understood this, then we will be going with the basic fundamentals of CN. Like I'll be giving you the basic fundamentals of computer networking. Once we have done all the basic requirements is clear, very clear, pretty clear, then I will be taking you to some of the numerical concepts. Now, numerical concepts is not like I'm giving you some X, Y values and you're performing that. It's not like that. Basically, it's more on the core part. Like core part is, let me say, I'm saying you like there is 1 GB of data that I want to transfer. So in the networking part, the industry asks you like how much bandwidth should be allowed to that particular user. So that will be one thing. Second will be the routing things. Many different types of numericals plays a very important role in networking. So that we'll be discussing how to do, and also we'll be going with how to solve these things. Apart from that, I will be introducing to a very important part, that is network security. So what do you mean by network security? Like how network security is basically the future part of networking. If you want to go into the security part, or if you want to go into the cyber security or infrastructure security, or if you want to go into the hacking concepts, ethical hacking part, then this computer networking plays as a very basic, what you can say, requirement in the industries. Like, agar aapko you want to go and perform an ethical, you want to perform or you want to act as an ethical hacker in any industry, or you want to act as a cybersecurity expert in any industry, then the basic requirements that is needed is you need to know about networking. Because if you don't know the networking part, networking concept, probably you will not be able to understand the data transfer, the encryption methodologies, you will not be able to understand the hacking methodologies, and you will not be able to come up with the mitigation methods for these hacking technologies. So the future part of your computer networking, I can say broadly as in security part, if the students want to pursue their careers into it. Apart from all these things, I'll be discussing some very genuine, expected, and general questions that will be asked in the industries or during the time of interviews, and also some technical interview questions which I'll be sharing with every one of you. I hope this is clear. First, we'll be starting with the importance of this domain. Then I will be going with the basics about this domain. Then I will be going with the basic fundamentals of the networking. Then we will be going with some very numerical concepts that will be asked in the technical interviews or some different sessions where you are actually cracking the jobs in this particular domain. And then I'll be discussing about the future prospect of this domain, that is, let me say, network security, cyber security, infrastructure security, or let me say if you're going into the ethical hacking part. And finally, we'll be discussing about the technical interview questions, the expected questions, and the generalized questions about this domain. So I'll make sure that at the end of this session, probably you will be trained in this particular domain, and you will be able to crack any interviews in this particular domain. So let us start with this. Now, as I said, I'm not going to directly start with what are the two opportunities, what is the definition and nothing like that. What I'll try to discuss here is, first I'll try to give you the highlights about this domain. Now, when I'm coming to the domain called as networking, okay, when I'm coming to the domain called as networking, so usually the students find it as networking is nothing but just one thing. That is, we have to check with the data transfer, cabling part, and all that things. Yes, that is one very important part. So, in industries, when I'm going, if you're selecting this domain as your main future path or the career path, then there are two opportunities in this domain. First, I would like you to brief you with this. So, the first and very foremost type of category of networking is basically you will be acting as a network engineer in any industry. Okay, I'll tell you what is network engineer and what is network plus security engineer. Okay, this is all the information that I'm trying to share here is directly from the industry related colleagues that I have taken, and they have shared this information, which I'm liking to put it in front of you. So there are two broad domains or the categories or the opportunities for the students who want to pursue their career in networking industry. Networking industry ये किसके लिए है basically? First, let me answer this question. Now, there are many students who have queries like, I'm not that good into coding. Like, I understand, but when I'm given to write a line of 100 codes, probably I'm not able to do that. Okay. No worries, it happens with some set of students. So, I'm not able to do that. Of course, practice will make you perfect for that. But there are few students who have complete different interests. Okay. Apart from this regular coding, like using all these coding languages, there are few students who want to go into the core technical fields. So one of the opportunities for such students is the networking domain. So what do we do in networking? For which students it is? The students who find the core technical parts as a very interesting part, and secondly, when they don't want to go getting into the coding part. So for them, I would like to say that networking plays a very important field. Now, when I'm saying these two opportunities, the first opportunity is basically called as a network engineer. So, what is network engineer? Is basically all the things that you're studying in your academics, like the routing methods, the switching methods, or sharing the information or the data between two users or two people or two systems. That is network engineer. So, network engineer का role क्या होता है फिर industries में? Network engineer basically plays the role as in that particular engineer is responsible to track that any information in their industry, okay, any information is there in their industry is routed through a proper channel so that it reaches from one device to the other device or to the other end node properly, and they have to keep a track of this entire sharing of messages. Like जो भी data generate हो रहा है and whatever data they want to flow, the network engineers are taking very precise care that all this information is translated very carefully between two nodes and the two destination people. Like for example, if I want to say a software engineer is writing some lines of codes, okay, and now this particular engineer tries to execute this through, let me say, or deploy this particular code. So they are connected through this VPN. All software engineers now, we are working from home. So you must have seen in your homes, or probably you must have heard that any IT engineer in your home, they directly don't get connected to their industry networks. They have to get connected through VPNs. VPNs are basically private networks, virtual private networks. So what makes them to join through VPN is they are securely connected to this network. Now, when any engineer is trying to get connected to the servers, okay, of the industries using this VPN, so here comes the role of this network engineers where they have to take care that the proper codes, the proper authentication, and everything is followed. Apart from this, any type of data that is being floated in the industry between various clients are who? The employees, and between the server, any type of data transfer or communication is there that has to be taken of utmost care. So that all roles is done by network engineer. So network engineer, they are basically working on different shifts because there is continuous data transmission. Like if I'm not saying that it is an Indian origin company, so it's going to work only on Indian these things. It works on the entire global standards. So that time the network engineers are expected to work 24 by 7 in shifts because the data transfer has to be taken care at each and every second between the servers and between the clients. A very important part in networks is the servers and clients. Clients are who? The employees, and the server is the main portal where the entire, what we can say, your industry data is being stored or recorded. So it can be basically a cloud server or it can be your physical servers. So all this type of particular things will be taken care or will be noted by this network engineers. Now this is one set of engineers who want to work only on the core networking part. बट अपार्ट फ्रॉम दिस नाउ आई डोंट वांट टू गेट इन ओनली इनटू नेटवर्किंग, मुझे और भी कुछ करना है. तो वो और क्या होता है? नाउ द सेकंड ब्रॉड कैटेगरी और द अपॉर्चुनिटी दैट इज ओपन्ड to the students in this particular domain is, if you have the concepts of networking clear, very clear, you can get into the domain called as a security expert. Now, why security is considered to be as the future prospect of this particular domain is because, let me say, I am using this networking, I am browsing some XYZ website. Now, when I'm browsing this XYZ website, there are many online transactions we do on networks. Networking kya hai? When you're connected to internet and when you're trying to process some of the other data. Now, let me say there is a person who has got connected to some particular XYZ website. Now, what that user wants to purchase some object or some particular thing. So he goes for online payment. Now, there are many options. If you see, every one of us are doing. We are going for Google Pay. We are going for Paytm. We are going for debit card payments. We are going for credit card payments. And so many different types of transactions we are doing, right? So when it comes to this particular transactions, okay, so as in security engineer, the role of you particular engineer acts is you have to make this entire session highly secure. No one else or third person should be able to hack your data. Okay. Apart from this, let me say there is a server and there are thousands of clients. Now, if there is one hacker here, what they can do is they can try to hack your server, and all the information, as I said, will be stored on your servers. So, if this information is leaked, your industry will have to pay a very huge loss, has to bear a very huge loss. So in this particular case, now what we have come up is, or what the industry wants is, if you are saying that you are a core network engineer, can you work on its security prospects too? Yes, of course you can work by just updating or upgrading yourself with some security subjects related to this particular domain. You can of course go into a very broad category of security engineers. Right now, what you can do is you can just browse on the internet and you can just type and see like what the roles or the openings for the network security engineers or the security engineers in the industry. So there are very basic requirements they have, like you have done one or two certifications, and you have very good concepts of networking and basics of security. So if you are able to answer these questions, you are in into the industries. So very basic requirements are there. The set of questions that are also asked in this domain are also very simple. Like there are very fixed set of questions which I'll also be discussing. So if the set of questions are discussed with you clearly, if you have all these questions in your mind already prepared, then it's very easy to crack these type of interviews or these type of jobs. So many students in the last year also we have done this session, and a few students have also done some type of certifications, and now they're already working as a cyber security experts, or they're working as a network security experts in the industries. So this is for the set of students basically who want to go into a core technical fields, and they also want the huge opportunities of the huge domain, then you can please go and understand this domain. It will be really very much helpful. One thing I would like to tell you here is this field doesn't say that you are going to have zero coding. No, you will also be having some part of coding here, but it's very, very less. Like अगर आपने एक Java या किसी भी language में, if you have written 10 line of codes, you get some one or two lines of outputs that you can just check whether you're getting the proper results or not. यहाँ पे क्या होता है, you just write one line of code and you can get the very precise information about the thing that you want. एक ही मेरा इंस्ट्रक्शन होगा, एक ही मेरा कमांड होगा. दिस इज बेसिकली ऑल लिनक्स बेस्ड. नेटवर्किंग कभी विंडोज में नहीं होता है. नेटवर्किंग इज यूजुअली मोस्टली डन ऑन द लिनक्स और द यूनिक्स सिस्टम्स, ऑपरेटिंग सिस्टम्स. So by using this command category or command sets, I can actually get into the very important information of networking. Of course, we'll be studying that later on. Some important commands I'll be discussing. So यहाँ पे we don't need a very large set of coding or anything like that. We need some type set of coding, but that is very, very, very basic as compared to other coding languages. And then you get the very precise information about the things or the interest that you want to get. Okay, so for that, what is the requirements I'll be telling you? I hope I'm clear with the opportunities in this domain. If you have any queries or any questions, you can please post it in the chat section. Uh, this was some basic opportunities. Now I would like to discuss some top 5 career domains in networking, because I'm trying to open up for you people this domain. So I would also like to guide you on the top 5 career domains in networking. The very basic type of career domain you can have is you can get selected or recruited as a network administrator or a network analyst in any industry. Secondly, you can act as a network security engineer, security analyst, or a cyber security engineer, which I've already discussed in the previous slide. Third career domain for the students in networking is basically you can go as a data center analyst. Now we say we are all playing in the domain of big data. So when I'm saying it, a big data, that is a huge information, huge data that is stored in the servers. So it is basically trying to figure out the exact data that you want to work on, and then process that data and share that data. So it is also here where the network engineers are playing a very wide role, and network data center network engineer. So you will be responsible for managing this entire data centers. Okay. Amazon, Flipkart, they have a very wide range of employees who are working on these parts. Next domain you can go in networking is थोड़ा सा अलग है कंप्यूटर से. It's a wireless network administrator. You're not working precisely on computer, but you're working on wireless networking. You're going for wireless network engineer and you're going for mobility engineer. Of course, when I'm saying networking, mobility plays a very important role. If it is wired, then that is not the case. But if you're saying my networking is in the wireless field, then mobility plays a very important role. And apart from this, the very important part that is VoIP, Voice over Internet Protocol Engineer, IP stands for Internet Protocol Engineer and Telecom Engineer. But what I would like to suggest is these three domains, the first three domains, they have a very large openings when you're coming to the industries now. You can just check it, even in the, what you can say, you can just go and browse on the internet. You will find that there are large set of openings for this particular set of students or this particular set of employees in very uh, well settled or well organized industries, I can say. So these are basically top five career domains in network. Okay. So now I've understood what are the requirements, what are the opportunities, what are the career domains. So if I want to get into this, what I need to have, what are the skill sets that are required. So the skill sets required are some very basic things that I'll tell you. Firstly and very foremost, you need to know the basics of computer network. Now this is very simple. Like अगर आप कोई भी field में जाते हो, like if you're going even in any programming field, they first try to ask you that do you have the basics of this particular programming language. Then only they start with the basics and then they go with some high level questions. So similarly, when you are going for what you can say networking jobs, the very first requirements they need to have is basics of computer networking. Now, of course, that you need to have, which I'm also going to cover. Now, the very important operating system you need to know in networking is Linux. Now, I'm sure that you are also studying or you're also refreshing yourself on the subject called as operating systems. So they are telling you, whoever is taking, they are giving you a very good highlights about what is the importance of operating systems. So basically, you need to know which operating system you work on. So when you're coming to industries, they are basically, it is not you're going to work on Windows or anything, but they are going to ask you about the Linux operating systems. So if you have not yet explored the operating system of Linux, this would be my highly recommendation that you please explore yourself in Linux operating systems, because that is the very important thing that you need to know when you're going to the networking industry. Because every networking commands or every networking instructions are done using Linux operating systems, Unix basically. So you can go with this operating system. So if you have not been, please study and explore yourself with Linux operating system. And apart from that, the cream on the cake would be that you just have some certifications, basic certification on any Linux operating systems. Here you can go for Red Hat Linux, or you can go for any Linux courses that are being floated in this online modes. Many platforms of giving you trainings on Linux operating system. So you can just explore that and have a certification done. It will be in hardly a span of 15 to 20 days. You can do that. Once you are very much good versed, or once you are very much good into the basics of operating system and the basics of networking, the second important requirement that the industry wants you to have a knowledge about is about the routing and the switching techniques. Now, what is routing and what is switching, we'll be discussing in more brief when I come to my actual model explanation of networking. But routing and switching techniques plays a very important role in networks. Like routing is basically between two nodes, how the data has to be traveled. Like let me say, I'm presently over here in my country and I want to send a data to some node which is in some different part of the world. So here the data travels through multiple nodes. Okay, the data travels through multiple nodes. So how and which node will carry your data to this particular end node, that is very important. So that is how the data you have released here. But how that data travels, that has to be taken care very precisely. So all these routing technologies, of course, it's not manual. You have some algorithms for that. and even for switching techniques, like how the data is switched between one node to another node. When I'm saying routing, it is entirely between this node and this node. When I'm saying switching, it is between this node to this node to this, second to third, and so on. Once a point 1 to point 2, how the data has to be switched, where it has to be switched, and on what parameters it has to be switched, that technology or that algorithm or that concept should be very much clear. Now, for this routing and switching techniques, of course, we you must have heard that there is a Cisco company which is working on this networking devices, etc. So they are also having their courses called as CCNA. They are having courses called as CCNP. They are having courses called as CCNA on routing and switching. So many such, what you can say, certifications are there. These are the entry level certifications for this particular industries. जैसे we used to do Sun certified for Java, or you have some different certifications as an entry level, or which gives you a very good, what you can say, stand in thousands of employees if you have done certifications. So this would be the, again, second recommendation or a very highly recommended thing, that if you want to get into this particular domain, before you pass out, like before 8th semester is completed, I would request everyone to have some certifications already done in your back. So that is, you can add it at the CV. So what happens is, if you have notified that you have completed this XYZ certification, so it adds in your resume, automatically tops up in hundreds of employees. And apart from all these things, it is a knowledge of BGP and OSPF. Of course, we'll be discussing this much in brief. So these are few skill sets that are required by any network engineers who is trying to get into the industry. So what are the requirements? As I said, please clear your basics about networking, about operating systems. Which operating system? I have specifically said that you need to go for the Linux operating system, because this is the operating system that is very widely used in the networking industries. When you go for the practical networking in the industries, you're not going to work on Windows or anything. You're going to work on the Linux operating systems. Okay, and in this also you're going to work on the commands, more on the commands. So that thing you have to study very clearly and have a certification done. Apart from this Linux, you have to be very much clear about what are the different routing algorithms, what are the different switching algorithms, what are the difference between these algorithms, and so on. So here what you have to do is, you need to have some certifications done if you want to get into the industry. So what are the certifications? It is CCNA, CCNP. Of course, I'm giving you the list. It is a CCNA on routing and switching methodologies and many different parts. Yeah. So this is all skill sets that are basically required. Of course, it's not limited to. Uh, Now I'll just tell you what are the roles of or responsibilities of a network engineer. Now, as I've already said, uh, when going to act as a network engineer, okay, what happens is, if you're joining in any as an IT engineer, basically as a coding Java engineer, or you can, software engineer, or a developer, basically. So what they try to do is, they try to put you in some particular code project, and they ask you to write some code for some specific function, and then you have to pass it on to your next team, who is going to further process that and further add on their part of coding, and at the end it will be made as integrated, and it will be made as one working code. Now, this is what is your role in IT engineers, or at the entry level, it is your role that you have to write a code for some particular set of functions. But as a network engineer, what they try to do is, they try to give you a project. Now, what is the project for the network engineers is, let me say, they are saying that we want to deploy a network for this company. So now you plan how the network has to be set up over there. So let me say there is a new company, okay, there is a new company who wants to set up a network in their offices, okay. So you, as a core network engineer, what you will try to do is, you have to first create a plan. Now that plan is nothing but called as a blueprint, okay. That plan is nothing but called as a blueprint. You need to have the blueprint ready, like how and uh, in which way you are going to deploy that network in that particular organization. You have to construct that network. When it comes to construct, it is basically the core part that you're going to play. And then it is not only about you planned and you constructed and it's over. Your organization will now be responsible for managing the network of that particular organization so that they don't face any hurdles when they are actually working on the internet or when they're actually working on the networks. Like, let me say there is an organization with 5 employees right now, and tomorrow there are 50 employees. So, your network that you have deployed in their organization should not be a hurdle for them to get connected or share the information. Apart from this, as a network engineer, you are also responsible for the foundation of an organization's IT system. Now, if you must have referred to VIT, we have our own IT structure built. Right? We have our own server rooms. We have our own routing devices. Sorry. We have our own routing devices. We have our own switching devices. So there is a complete infrastructure that has been built. So as a network engineer, as a core IT engineer, it is your role that you place a foundation of this organization's IT system very clearly, carefully, so that there should not be any loopholes for any third person party to attack to your data. So if you're just starting at, like, if you don't have any ideas about these responsibilities, if you have not studied, then these are some networking jobs that are available. In industries, they're basically hiring the freshers as network specialists. They're hiring the students as network administrators, network technicians, network analysts, network engineer, and finally network solution architect. Now, this is a very important part, or this is the very high level part, that if you have a very good information, then what you can be appointed as a network solution architect. So when I'm saying about network solution architect, it is basically a very high level job where you're not only responsible for creating a network, but you're also giving the solutions to that particular. Okay, so it is not only a working on designing a network, but you also come up with the solutions to the network. So if there is any hurdle, it is one who you are responsible to propose a solution, to plan the solution, and to implement that solution for that particular engineer. Okay, so these are few jobs that are available. So these are various stages. At the entry level stage, this is a very basic entry level stage where you will be appointed as a network analyst or a network administrator. This is some middle level stage of network engineers where you will be promoted as network manager or network designer, where you will be the one who is going to design the network, and in your team there are going to be a set of network engineers who are going to administer that or who are going to deploy that network. And finally, the higher level or the final level, or I can say the very senior level you can go, is a network solution architect, where the client gives you all the requirements. According to the requirements, you are going to create an architect, you're going to create a solution for that, whatever requirements are there, and then it is you who will be giving to the set of people here, and these set of people will be giving it over here. So this is how network actually plays in the industries. Yeah. So these are few expectations from the network engineers. If any students want to get in, these are few industries they expect from network engineers at the entry level. So you should be able to design, develop, or basically I may call it as in troubleshooting part. You should be able to maintain the firewalls and the security. Now, because I said that security also comes hand in hand along with networks or the core networking part. So maintaining the firewall, the security is very important. Many IP addresses are there because there are many IP addresses connected to your servers. So you have to keep a track of each and every IP address. Okay. Then it is like you have to perform routing, switches, and everything. We'll discuss it later on. You have to configure the DNS servers. DNS is a very, very important part in networking. I'll tell you why later on. And as I said, you need to have some additional certifications such as CCNA, CCNP, CNNP, CompTIA, Network Plus. These are all certified and very famous certification courses for networking. So These are the entry level certifications. So if you are currently in third year or final year, I would like to ask you to please go for this certification. So before you're out of your engineering span of 4 years, you are ready with all the certificates in your hand. What are the expectations from security engineer, which is different than your a general network engineer? So most of the things are same. Only thing is you will also be responsible for maintaining the IT security, information security. Like there should not be any attacks on your networks. If there are any attacks, it is one you are responsible to stop these attacks, or you have to come up with some solutions to overcome these attacks. Now, in the industries, they hire you. First thing is they hire when you design some application, end-to-end application, they ask you officially to hack this system. So you as a network security engineer, if you are able to get into this hacking part of that particular application, that means a third person party can also do that. So what they try to ask you is, like you being the employee of their company, first they will give you the role that you first attack on the networks and find out if there are any loopholes. If there are any loopholes, then we have to first sort it out, and then only once it is fully scrutinized, then only it goes as in product that has been launched to the in the market. So these are all the things that is done from the security engineers. So yes, this was all the things that I wanted to give in insights about network, because many people are not explored with all these things. Then these are various tools. Like now I said you so many things. So of course you might have a question like, okay, now I've understood, but how to proceed with this? How to proceed with this routing and switching methodologies, or how to understand how a network operates? Now here are the list of what you can say tools that I'm giving you here, where you can practice a basic network designing part. Now, what they will do you is in industries when you go, if the interviewer is very good into this domain, what he might ask you is like, I'm giving you a set of 10 routers, and I'm giving you some 5 switches or hubs or whatever it is, and there are 50 end nodes that I'm giving you. Now, what you do is, I want these end nodes to communicate with each other with these number of equipments or components only. Now, how will you do it? What IP addresses you will be assigning to them? So, all these things, what operating system you will be using here? So, all these things when they ask you to design, so how to design this particular network? That of course you can do using these 4 tools, very broadly used tools these are. So what are the tools is, if you must have heard of these tools, but still I'm repeating, it is called the Cisco Packet Tracer. Now this is an open source, what you can say, tool that is available directly on the browser, where you can download this tool and you can practice a lot of network designing parts. Like you can actually play with the routers, you can play with the switches, you can play with the end devices, you can play with the servers, you can play like networking में अगर आप एक smart home भी implement या deploy करना चाहते हो, there is a requirement that I want to create a network for my home, that is a smart home network. So smart home network also comes under as a sub part of computer networking. So there are many such devices that have been given, which you can actually create a project of smart homes, smart offices, smart industries, and you can test them. So once that test is successful, you can actually go for its implementation. Apart from that, we have a very famous tool also called as GNS3. So GNS3 एक बहुत ही light tool है. So what we can do is we can actually make a system server work on some operating system, and you can actually share the contents and everything, and you can test, design, test, and deploy your project. Uh, we have Wireshark. Wireshark is a very important tool again, which is used in the industries for analyzing part. Now, as I said, ये जो दो part था ये आपका core networking था. So, if you want to go into the security aspect, so you have to trace each and every incoming and outgoing packet to understand whether it is from a valid source or it is from an invalid source. अगर valid source है, then it is fine. If it is something from an invalid source, you have to immediately analyze, trace the data, and you have to come up with a solution like whether this particular packet is allowed in your network or it is not allowed. So when I want to analyze all these things, it is this Wireshark which is playing a very important part. Analyzing के लिए हम लोग बहुत use करते हैं. And then we have one more tool called as Cup Carbon. Cup Carbon is basically a software, again, a tool you can say, which you can actually design smart projects. Like there are many networking smart automation projects that are going on in network industries. You can also select one of the projects in your final year projects or mini projects and you can work on it. Many projects are there on Cup Carbon. So it all these tools are easily downloadable from your browser. I'm not giving anything which is not these all are available as an open source tool. So if you have practice on these tools, then it's fine. You can actually, if anyone gives you a task to deploy or study this particular domain or study the subject and study these devices and construct and deploy a network, it's very easy for you to do if you have worked on these all four tools. Okay, all of these are open source. If you wish, I can just paste the links tomorrow in the chat section. Yeah, this was on the tools which you need to know before you are going to design and deploy any of the projects. So this was all about the information that I wanted to share on the initial level for your computer networking, because there is always a thought for the students like how to go with this domain. So if all these instructions or information will be helpful for you if you want to start into this particular industry. Now we'll be starting with our core part of networking. So now I'll come to the main point. What do you mean by networks? So networks is basically, in very simple words, I can say. Now I'm very much sure that every one of us are using our cell phones, smartphones to get connected to so many numerous applications. Like for example, from my mobile itself, I'm using Amazon. From my mobile itself, I'm using Myntra. From my mobile itself, I'm using some XYZ application, and I'm trying to do some of the other thing. Like I'm trying to purchase some objects, or like let me say some buy selling applications. I'm trying to sell those objects. So what do you mean by network over here? So of course a network, like I'm creating a network between my device and that particular application, and we are trying to purchase or sell some type of products. Now let me say if I'm going on my laptop, and on the browser if I'm typing some www.xyz.com, so whenever, as soon as I click enter here, what happens is the UI part of this particular, or the HTML or the index page of this xyz.com page appears on your screen, right? So this is what is the front end part that you can look or you can see. What is happening is on the browser you have typed some XYZ website name, and as soon as you hit enter, within a span of few seconds, microseconds, that particular HTML page or index page or UI page is visible to you on your screen. Now whatever this is happening, this is what is being reflected to you. This is nothing but the front end. एक बात समझ लो, networking doesn't come into the front end. You cannot see networking at the front end. To make this UI appear on your screen, the backend process is nothing but networking. Understand the very much big difference here. When you are writing something on the browser, that means you are active now on the internet. That means आप network में active हो गए हो. So when you type something on the browser and when you receive their response from that particular server, like Amazon के server से I got that Amazon का UI. So that is the front end part. Now, what is the important part is इसके पीछे जो हो रहा है ना, like getting that index page and then putting it on your screen, that is where your computer network comes. Please understand this thing. Computer network ये कहाँ पे picturize होता है? It is not on the front part. You cannot see networking on the front part. That is what is the front end part, where you are seeing the UI of the pages, beautiful pages. But fetching the pages from the server and then putting it on your screen is nothing but the job of a computer network. Understand the difference here. Picking that page, that HTML page, that index page from the server, from that respective server, and then putting it on your screen is the role of a computer networking part. Okay, I'll tell you in very simple. This is just an image that I've added. If you see, I've added some images like Twitter, Facebook, hai, Chrome, hai. There are so many different applications. Now, when I'm saying Twitter is not an application of computer networking, Twitter is an independent application. Okay, Facebook is an application. It's not a computer network application. It's an application. Facebook code, I'm running it on some protocol. Let me say secure protocol HTTPS. Okay, you must have heard of HTTP, HTTPS. So HTTPS जो है ना, that is my computer networking. Facebook is not my computer networking. What is my computer networking? On the protocol which I'm running this Facebook or any other application. For example, आप Gmail use करते हो, you are using Yahoo mailing, you are using Outlook mails. These are individual companies who are working on their products, like they are the mailing products. Now, all this mailing, what you can say, platforms like let me say Gmail hai, Yahoo hai, Outlook hai, or any other mailing services you are seeing, all of them are working on my common networking protocol called as SMTP. सो एसएमटीपी क्या है? ये सारे जो भी आपके मेल की सर्विसेज है, इनको सपोर्ट कौन करता है नेटवर्क्स में? एसएमटीपी. If you don't have SMTP with you, then your these applications will have no meaning because they are not going to perform the mailing services because there is some fixed structure, there are some fixed paradigms you have to follow when you want to send a mail between two users. There is a fixed paradigm you have to follow when you want to get into the server and get the request or response from the server. There are fixed set of structures you have to follow, and all these structures are not followed using the front end application, but they are followed using the back end process. And ये back end में काम कौन करता है? Back end में the things which are performed is using protocols. Protocols किसमें आता है? Protocols आपके computer network. Please understand this. It's very, very important to understand. Networking will not look for you on the front part. Networking is always working at the back end process. Like back end process, like let me say right now I'm speaking in English or Hindi or whichever language that is understandable by you. But the very next moment, if I start speaking in Tamil or Malayalam or Kannada, probably most of you might not be able to recollect what I'm trying to say because this is the front end. This is what is I know I'm speaking. I am going to visualize it to you. But back in me, you are not able to understand. So now what I need is someone who is going to actually make you understand what I'm trying to speak. Okay, Gmail is a service provider, is a mailing service provider. That is what is front end. But to make you understand that this is a mail, so it has to follow some protocols that has been defined by the networking domain. So each and everything if you see आप browser में बहुत सारे applications use करते हो जैसे you are using HTTP, you are using HTTPS, you are using FTP, you are using telnets to see if you are connected to the servers or not, you are using SMTP, you are using DNS. Without all these protocols आपका application run नहीं होगा. आप applications को deploy करते हो, host करते हो. So when you host some particular applications, you get the IP address for that, and then you get the domain name like whatever it is there. So what happens is what is happening back end में when you are putting some applications live, it is you have to give a domain name and all that different things are there. But back end everything is controlled by this networking part. So as in core electronics or EXCC engineer, you can of course go into the hardware part. If you are very much interested, you can also go for the software part. But networking is a blend mode of software and hardware. Because core में you are going with the router, switches, devices, cabling part, wireless cable, wireless transmission, everything. As an IP engineer, you are going to play with these protocols. You are going to work on these protocols. You are going to work on these algorithms. You are going to work on the encryption methodologies. You are going to work on the decryption methodologies and so many things. So computer networking is not only core hardware part, it is a blended mode of hardware and software. So if this is not a network, like as I said, the front UI are not the network, then what is a network? So what you mean by exactly a network? Now this picture, what you can see on my screen is exactly how a network looks like. What do you mean by this now? See, right now what I had in the previous slide is I had this Twitter and some different applications. ये उसके फ्रंट एंड है कि उसके इंडेक्स पेज है. These are the HTML pages that has been floated to you. But at the back end, what is happening is, now let me give you an example here. Please understand this very carefully. Let me say this is my Sun Electronic Gadget, through which I'm typing this website as www.xyz.com. Now, as soon as I enter this website and you click enter, what happens in the networking is, now right now, if I ask someone, can you tell me the IP address of Google? Can you tell me the IP address of Facebook? Can you tell me the IP address of Myntra? Can you tell me the IP address of Nike? Or can you tell me some IP address of different websites? Now, of course, I don't remember. I just cannot memorize the IP addresses because it's very lengthy against IP addresses. I don't. Human beings cannot actually memorize IP addresses. So what we are doing in networking is, just say you have given, my parents have given me. So similarly, any website that has been floated, I'm giving them some specific name in networking. Now, why I'm giving this name? So that any user, if they want to access this website or if they want to access this application, let them access through this name. Let the functions to the user be simple. What I will do at the back end is, I'll create a, what you can say, database. I'll create a database where I'll store the IP address for this particular name. Like कि कौन से IP पे floated है, I will store it in my database. So as soon as whenever any user enters this name using the search engine, what I can do, or the searching functions, what I will do in my databases, like using SQL, और अगर आप एक NoSQL यूज कर रहे हो और कोई भी डेटाबेस अगर आप यूज कर रहे हो, so what I can do is I will try to get this IP address and put your packets or the data or the information to this IP address, और ये IP address जो है ये आपके servers पे located. Any from, like let me say, if you have taken 000 web host पे आपने host किया है, you must have done some maybe projects, you must have what you can say, put it on live, host किया होगा, so you must have hosted it some different applications जैसे GoDaddy वगैरह होता है. So those are the servers जहाँ पे आपके applications जो है वो वहाँ पे hosted होते हैं. So here, what you can see is only this name, but what is happening at the back end is, there is an IP address, there is a unique IP address that has been assigned to your website or the application. Now from here, so from here comes the role of your network part. From here, what comes is the network part. So here, if you see in this particular image, I've tried to show you that there are many networking components that are involved. जैसे routers है, firewalls है. You can see there are switches, there are server. Now, software engineers probably they would be involved more into this file server, database server. They would be more involved into this, end devices. They will be involved with this PC configurations and everything, or let me say they are involved into what you can say, this operating system part, and the person who is responsible, or the person who what you can say, who is responsible as in core part, he will be going to handle this routers, firewalls, switches, all this particular end or this nodes will be handled by the core engineer. Okay, so here if you see, there is an engineer who is actually working on this particular part, and also there is an IT engineer who is working on this all particular parts in an network. So it's basically, it's a combination of यहाँ पे जो है it is completely hardware managed, and यहाँ पे it is completely software managed. So it's always a blended mode of hardware and software. So this is very important to understand. So what exactly in network happens is, like let me say if I'm typing, as I said, some xyz.com. So what is the first thing that happens in your network? Is first your network tries to get the IP address for this particular website or the application that you want to get connected to. So ये IP address कौन retrieve करता है from that particular database is nothing but a protocol in network called as DNS. So what DNS does is they identify this particular website is hosted with which IP address, and then this IP address is hosted on which particular server. So all this information will be retrieved by some protocols in the network, Basically, it's a very famous protocol you must have heard of, that is DNS protocol. So when, let me say, this is the server where your application is hosted. So who takes the responsibility of getting you connected from here to this server is a DNS part. Now here, when you are sending, that is basically you have sent a request that I want to access your index page. So let me say in this servers, there are n number of applications that are hosted. So it finds out like XYZ जो है, it is hosted on which IP address, and in that particular IP address, there are many files that will be stored. Basically, the HTML file or the index file, in very short, the UI part. So what this server will do is it will fetch this index or HTML page, and then it will give you this back to the client or to the user. So it is nothing but giving you a response, either a valid response or whether an invalid response, that you're not allowed to use this page or you're not allowed to use this service, or you are successfully, the index page gets reflected on your screen. That means you have got a positive acknowledgement or a positive response. If you have not received that page, like sometimes if you see, there is continuously loading thing that happens on your screen. Sometimes it says that you 404 error. That means what? That IP address, that page is not able to be fetched from the server and is not able to be replicated to you on your machine or on the device. So at that time, it is nothing but called as a negative acknowledgement, where you are not getting a proper response. So the application, the device, the method, the place where your applications are hosted are the servers, and the users who want to get connected to this particular service or the application are nothing but the clients. Now, this is a very basic traditional paradigm in computer networking, that it is very famous in working in the client server architecture. So, any application, anything is there on the server, you want to fetch it from there, then you become the client, and where the application is hosted becomes the server. So, it is server's responsibility to identify the files, that HTML index, and whichever files you want, and give it to that particular end node. So here there are many other different constraints, like how is it that it is given only to this client and not to client 2 and not to client 3 and not to client 4, that we will be discussing later on. But here what plays an important model is the request response model, on which your entire networking is working on. आपका entire networking किससे काम करता है? It works on the client server paradigm, or it works on the client server configuration. Okay, and it is working, and this client server is working on the request response model. Means when you want to request something to the client, it is you are sending a request information, a request page, that I want to access your HTML page or your index page. Now the server gives you a response by sending the index page, which when sent, it will be available on your device as in UI part of that particular application. So if the server is sending you a positive response, ये आपको स्क्रीन पे दिखाई देता है. If the server is not acting or the server is down, basically you don't get this UI pages and you will not be able to continue in the network. Sometimes even the banking applications, they tell you that the server is down, means that means what, you will not be able to use that services. So this is what is at the back end happening in a network. Front end is completely different. Front end is you're writing some Java scripts, and that is there on your, that is what you access and that is what you can visualize. But when it comes to networking part, you cannot visualize that, because everything is happening at the back end of the system. Okay. So backend offices, backend systems, backend operating, backend management is everything the role of a network engineer. Okay. So I hope I'm clear with what is actually a network, and what network really depends on, and how the networks are working on which particular model. Now, after studying all these things, these are your basic fundamentals. So now what do you mean by networks? So networks is basically, let me say, it's a connection of multiple devices which is connected using medium. Medium is nothing but what I can say again as in channels. Okay. So when multiple devices are connected using some channels, like it can be any cables, it can be a simple twisted pair cable. जैसे आपके घर में, if you must be having a set-top box, You must be seeing that there is a coaxial cable which is connected to your set-top box, and there is an antenna in your set-top box which is receiving the signal from that particular station. And then that is being fed to your television using that cable. So that is again a computer networking. You are using remote controls in your home, so that is again a computer networking. You are using your laptops to get connected to the internet, to the browser, that is again networking, right? In our college only, we are using labs like Lab 7, Lab 5, Lab 11, Lab, many such labs where you are having systems which are being placed and which are connected to the internet. You can see they are using their optical cable, fiber optics, or you can see they are using coaxial cables, or you can see they are twisted pair cables. So when one device is getting connected to any other device using any sort of medium, let it be wired or wireless, then that is nothing but you're creating a network over there. So it's basically simple connection. Why I'm going to connect to share some sort of information. Okay. So technically, when I'm coming, when the interviews are asking you, please be aware that you don't call them as in laptops or mobile phones or nothing. In technical interviews, you have to generally name it as in notes and as in links. So what you can say, the interviewer may ask you like, I want to create a topology wherein there are hundreds of users and there is only two routers or two switches or one router, whatever it is. So you tell me how many links I need to have and how you can minimize that. So it is basically links is nothing but what the cables that you will need to deploy this project. Okay, the cables that you will need because you need to have a rough evaluation like how much will be your expenditure of the project, right? You need to have a rough idea and how many type of cables you need to have, where those cables need to be implemented and deployed and put in place so that you get a proper network access. So the interviewer is not going to directly give you some X amount and ask you to get the cables or the devices. They are going to ask you for the budget. So how will you calculate that budget? For that, you need to calculate the number of links that a topology will require or that the requirement will be there from the client side. If he's saying that there are only 5 employees, it will cost you very few bucks. But if it is saying that there are 50,000 employees in the organization and I want to deploy a network, the budget will be little higher side. So you have to calculate this. So the interviewer may ask you one question. He will give you the topology. He will give you the set of nodes. He will give you the set of what you can say devices, and now ask you like just identify how many links will be required. So according to that, you can create a budget. Yeah. So before we are deploying any project in networking, we need to give a very clear statistics on how much will be the budget requirement. So for that, you need to know how many nodes are there and how many links are there. The person who is trying to crack you with the interviews is not going to ask you like kitne cables लगेंगे, what will be, what type of cable you are going to use. So you have to be very clear in all these things. So it is simply called as nodes and links. So what are nodes? Nodes are nothing but the devices that you're using in computer networking. It can be anything. Like it can be your laptops, it can be your desktop systems, it can be your mobile phones, it can be your tablets, any sort of electronic gadgets that you're using to browse or to get connected to the internet. एंड लिंक्स इज अ टाइप ऑफ केबल यू आर गोइंग टू यूज. जैसे आपके घर में आपने एक लैंड कनेक्शन बनाया है, सो यू आर गोइंग टू यूज अ कोएक्सियल केबल, राइट? और if you are saying it's just a remote control or a very simple telephone application, then you're going to use a twisted pair. Like let me say if there is an organization like let me say Jio या कोई भी एक telephonic company है, they are going to use the optical side because when I'm going for optical fiber, it goes on a higher budget side, which an individual LAN at a home cannot afford it. So that's the reason we identify the type of links that will be required for any type of specific projects. So in simple words, what do you mean by network is it is just a connection of nodes, multiple nodes using links for having various type of applications. Okay. Various type of applications can be just sharing the files between two people or browsing the internet which is spread all over the. So now define what is network. So using all these fundamentals, you can easily define what is network. So these are few questions that the industries will ask you at the very beginning part. Okay, just as you enter, these are few questions that will be asked. Now, do you know what is a node and what we call as a links in the industry? So it's basically yes. Nodes are nothing but any electronic device that we're using, and link is the type of medium that I'm using to connect these two nodes together. Okay, I hope I'm clear with this. Next, now network relies on what? Now I understood what is network and I understood everything. Now before going on, network depend किस पे करता है? I'll try to take one example. Let me say there is a student or there is an employee. Okay. Now what happens is this employee wants to communicate with the higher authority of an organization. Let me say with the VP or let me say with the CEO. He wants to communicate something. Now he is a very basic level employee, like at a very starter level, so he directly cannot go and directly he cannot go to the cabin of a VP or a CEO. He needs to have an appointment first. And when he's taking an appointment, they are basically asked like, what is the requirement for this meeting? What is the agenda? What is the point of this meeting? So if the employee has some certificate set of queries or something, what happens is basically they say, okay, you can just sort it out with your team leader first. Let your team leader check if that is solved, that particular query can be resolved at his level. Now, if team leader said that this employee has a very specific constraint, then the team leader will forward your constraint or your request to the manager, your manager of that project. And if this manager also cannot solve that particular constraint, he will forward it to the VP or the CEO and say that this is a constraint that has been raised. So now we need to come up with some solution, right? Or else, let me say another example. Like there is a student, okay, and he has some specific constraint or some specific query regarding any specific matter. So he wants to communicate with the principal of the college. So it's not like directly he can go and he or she can go and meet the principal. So what is we do follow some hierarchies in the organizations or the industries, educational institutes. Like the student is first requested that whatever queries he or she has, please bring it to the notice of one central person. Like let me say it can be a class teacher or let me say your overall coordinator who is responsible for the student management and everything. If the problem of the query is solved at this level, it's fine. Or else what this class teacher will do is they will take it to the higher authority, to the head of the department. So most of the things can be resolved at the head of the department level. If it's not solved, then it goes to the principal. My basic motto of giving these two examples is whenever I want to perform a basic set of functions, that is, whenever I want to communicate between two people, I need to follow a very particular hierarchy. I need to follow a hierarchy. Using this hierarchy, what happens is I can reduce the complexity of my data communication. I can reduce the complexity of my data communication. If it's solved here itself, the complexity is reduced. If it's solved here, the complexity is reduced. So मुझे क्या करना है? I want to reduce the complexity. Now इसको थोड़ा technical में move करते हैं. Let me say there is one user who wants to access this xyz.com or who wants to get communicated with the user XYZ in the network who is presently placed somewhere else. Now, what this XYZ person writes is using WhatsApp. Let me say he's writing, "Hi, this is some person. This is user A, and your meeting is scheduled at let me say 8 a.m." Now, ये जो message है, it is just a combination of alphabets, special symbols, special characters, numbers, and everything. Now, when I'm coming, ये क्या है? This is nothing but my system. Now, I am sure that you must have studied in this one or two engineer span that आपका जो system होता है, it doesn't understand your alphanumeric characters, special symbols, numbers, nothing. It understands only one language that is nothing but a binary language which is made of zeros and ones. Now, this plays a very important role here. आपके सिस्टम में आपको ये मैसेज जो है ये यूजर बी को देना है. सो यू टाइप सम स्पेसिफिक मैसेज एंड यू हैव जस्ट हिट एंटर. जैसे ही आपने हिट एंटर किया, ये क्या हुआ? ये एक पैकेट बन गया. Now in this packet, this information is there. But my system, when it wants to share it with this system, they probably are not understanding what is that message, what is this message, because it is not their way, it is not their language. So, what is your first and very foremost thing is you need to convert it into the binary language. आपको उसको ऐसे language में convert करना है जो आपकी system को समझ में आए. So your computer understands which language is the binary language, ASCII language, ASCII codes. So you have to first convert it into the binary language. Now, when it is converted into the binary language, it is all in the form of zeros and ones. ये जो भी कुछ आपने मैसेज लिखा है यहाँ पे, it is always in the form of 0101 1010 and so on. It is a long stream of ones and zeros, right? So during the transmission, now assume or imagine that during transmission, अगर एक हाथ bit यहाँ पे, if any one bit gets what you can say deleted or removed from the application, the entire message will be wrong, which will be given to user B, and whatever you have sent will not match with whatever that has been received by user. So now what I'll do, I'm again to the zero position. I have to come back again to the user A, ask him to generate the message once again and send it to the user B once again. Here also again I'm not sure that whether the correct message will be received or whether it will not be received. So when I'm doing all these types of networking part, like I'm taking some particular data, some file from a source and I'm giving it to the end node or the destination node, my system has to perform some specific set of functions. जैसे टीम लीडर का एक अलग फंक्शन होता है, क्लास टीचर का अलग फंक्शन होता है, मैनेजर हैज सम स्पेसिफिक सेट ऑफ फंक्शंस, हेड ऑफ द डिपार्टमेंट हैज अ डिफरेंट सेट ऑफ फंक्शंस, वाइस प्रिंसिपल, सीईओ, principal, they have a different set of functions. So here, everyone has their own set of functions, own set of authority they have, which they can perform. So here when I'm coming to sending the data between two nodes or two devices or two machines, it's very much required that you first make them understand their language, you encrypt their language because no third person should be able to hack your data, and you should not, and the data what you're sending between two machines should be completely error. Okay, it should reach in the minimum time, like let me say if you want to access an shopping page, like let me say तो फिर एक IRCTC page आपको access करना है for Tatkal bookings, okay? And it starts at let me say 10 a.m. or 9 a.m. or 11 a.m. whatever it is. Now if my network is very slow and it is like to go to the server, fetch the page and give it to you, it is taking a lot of time, and in that time span of time the entire tickets are sold out. So then would you prefer such networks? No, you would not prefer such network. So there were many different companies also. Like we had some different companies who had put their SIM cards or the what do you say uh, industries into market, but that couldn't survive because of the lacks in the networks, because of the delay that were taking place in the network. So very important thing is whenever I'm trying to generate some message and when I'm trying to send it to the destination, it should be done in a very quick time. Right? This is my requirement. Like when if I'm using a very smartphone and I'm typing some website and if the page is not getting loaded to me, one or two or three times I try to refresh it. But the fourth time, the generally user gets frustrated because he or she is not able to retrieve that page. So if the network performance is very low, then basically your network will not survive into the market. So here, when you are coming to any network, it has to follow, like it has to reach in the minimum time to the destination. It has to, properly secure your data because without security, आपका network पूरा open हो जाएगा. So you have to secure your network. You have to manage your network properly, precisely, so that entire encryption and everything has been taken place. So the same concept comes into networking. Like when I want to share some information between two devices, like what model or what hierarchy I need to follow. So in computer networking, the very famous model or the famous data that we take is basically called as OSI model, which stands for Open System Interconnect Model. ये एक ऐसा मॉडल है which tells you how the data is transferred from any user at the source to any user at the destination part. How the data is transmitted, what should happen with your data, how your data should be processed, how the data will reach in the minimum time to the destination, everything will be taken care by your OSI, right? तो जैसे एक मॉडल था अपने कॉलेज में, like you go to class teacher, you go to academic coordinator, you go to HOD, you go to principal. Like you had done parenting, you go to your vice, you go to your team leader, you go to your manager, you go to your VP, you go to your CEO. This is the loop that we follow. Similarly, when we come in the networks on the technical field, in the technical part, we follow some layers, and for each layer, I have given some specific set of functions. Like मैंने class teacher को एक specific set of functions दिया है. I have given some specific set of functions to the what you can say head of the department. I have given some specific set of functions to the principal or the vice principal, and everyone is working in the specific set of functions that have been assigned. So here, similarly, when I'm coming to computer networking, I'm going to use a very famous model that is used in each and every networking models, networking devices, that is called as an OSI model. So OSI model is very important because it gives you a proper structure in how your data should be transmitted between the source and the destination. Now please remember, OSI model जो है, it is a hypothetical model. That means what? It is just a reference model. It is not practically implemented. It is a reference model. So using this reference, I'm going to build my structure on how my network is going to operate on. And once I'm very much clear कि कहाँ पे क्या होगा, कौन से algorithms use होंगे, what time it will take to reach, and everything is sorted, then I will go for the practical implementation of this model. So जब मैं practically implement करती हूँ, it is not OSI, because OSI जो है वो एक hypothetical model है. प्रैक्टिकली जो मॉडल हम लोग सिस्टम्स में इंप्लीमेंट करते हैं, दैट इज कॉल्ड एज अ TCP/IP प्रोटोकॉल सूट, or it is called as a TCP/IP model. The very first time when we come up with this idea of internet or of sharing or of computer networking, it was TCP/IP that was in place in the industry. But TCP/IP was very complex, and we were not able to understand how the data communication should take place, how the data transfer should take place, what should be the processing part of the data in the networks, nothing. So they came up that, okay, let us sort out this by designing a very layman structure of the model that was called as an OSI model. It's an open system. As the name suggests, it's an open system. Like each and everything is open. So anything you want, you can just integrate, and you can implement, and that model can start working over there. But as I said, this is practically not possible. So it was just an hypothetical view, like if this ये काम ऐसे होना चाहिए networks में. So once you have a clear idea, fair idea on how your network should operate, you go for the practical approach, that is by using TCP/IP model. So why is this model important? I've just tried to give some information here. OSI जो है ये 7 layers में build होता है. Okay. Now why 7 layers? Because we wanted to have a very fair what you can say working methodology. So they came up with the 7 layers of model. Hence the practical model that we are trying to implement is of 4 or 5 layers. But I still wanted to reduce the complexity, so we came up with the 7-layer model. If it is not divided into 7 layers, what can happen is this entire OSI model एक खाली box जैसे बनेगा, जिसमें आपने data को feeding किया है, whatever data is there you have fed it. So convert it into ones and zeros, encrypt this data, identify the time limit that it is going to reach to the destination, at what time it is going to reach, what will be the delay, what will be the algorithm to identify the shortest route between the source and destination, and so many different algorithms आपको एक ही box में stuff करना है. So who is giving that authority that first आप convert करो, फिर आप algorithm decide करो, फिर आप cable decide करो, फिर आप time delay decide करो? How are you going to structureize this thing if you are not giving a proper hierarchy? Anyone can start acting anytime, and anyone can do anything with that data. And in the end, after processing entire data is ready, you are not pretty sure that how is the efficiency of this data. So instead of keeping it as a complete black box approach, it is called as a black box approach in networks. Instead of keeping it as a black box, Let us keep it into as divided into 7 layers and keep each layer very simple. Give it functions there, let them perform the specific set of functions and give it to the next authorized layer. So as I said, OSI जो है, it is a hypothetical model. That means it is just a framework. जैसे frameworks आपने use किए होंगे. So this is just a framework on how a network should work. Okay, it is just a hypothetical, practically implemented model. Actual implementation in networks is actually TCP/IP model, or you can TCP/IP, you can call it as a protocol. So TCP एक है जो protocol है, IP भी जो है एक protocol है, so it is a protocol suite that is being followed in the networks. So TCP/IP actually supports the data from the source to the destination. OSI gives you a brief idea about the data transfer, and TCP/IP is the one who is actually carrying that particular data. Okay. This is just some basic information. So what are the functions of each layer we are going to study? So if you don't remember this layer, so the layers that are there in OSI is first the application layer, because the major person, that is the user, who is first going to generate some data on the browser. Let me say some www.abc.com. So this is the message that we have generated. So this is an application which is working on HTTP, or it is working on HTTPS protocol. So application layer में क्या होता है? You have a set of protocols. Like they have already implemented HTTP, HTTPS. They have implemented here DNS. They have here SMTP. They have here SNMP. They have different set of protocols. They say FTP. They say Telnet, and many different protocols. So depending on what is the request of the user, what is the request, he or she wants to use an HTTP or HTTPS protocol. So the application there says that इन सारे protocols में से इन सबको निकालो, and now the user wants to use this protocol. So उसके basis पे आपका जो पूरा नीचे layers है, they will start functioning as per the requirements of this particular protocol. So the first thing that you have to identify is the protocol on which the user wants to work. Like let me say if the user is typing here gmail.com, that means what? He wants to access the email services or email services in the internet. So email service कौन provide करता है आपको? SMTP provide करता है. So what it says is now I'll be working on the SMTP protocol. Okay. So these are the few things. User को सिर्फ एक ping करके देखना है एक server पे. Like let me say this is a server, and the user wants to check whether I'm connected to this server or no. So what he tries to do is he just opens the command prompt and he writes this instruction, that is telnet 10.10.27.0. So if the user is connected to this IP address, the telnet will send a message or a command that you have been connected to, and that particular server will open up for your services. So there are different type of services that application want to do. So user को actually में करना क्या है? That has been decided at this application layer. Once the user has decided in the application layer, then the layers below will do their set of functions what we have assigned in OSI, and then they will take the message will be delivered to the end node. So how to remember these applications is you can just use this functioning or a palindrome बोल सकते हैं. That is all people seem to need data processing. That is application layer, presentation, session, transport, network, data, and physical. Or you can also use this method that is physical, data, network, transport, session, presentation, application. Please do not type secret passwords anytime. ये जो है ये आपका security का aspect है, and ये जो है ये आपका core networking का aspect. So it is just as I said, it is a blend of network and security together that we are performing in the industries. Now let us discuss the layers. Layers की functions क्या होते हैं वो थोड़ा सा हम लोग brief कर लेते हैं in today's session. So let us understand OSI layer in brief. So as you can see this image over here, what I am trying to replicate here is there are two end devices. Let me say end device A and end device B. So what this user A wants to do is they want to share this file, the same file, from this device to this device. So here what comes into picture is the data transfer between two nodes. where you getting into the picture of all this networking. And second picture I have tried to show here, if you see, there are two users, user A and user B. And user A wants to send some sort of data to user B. So the user has generated that particular message on their system, electronic system, and that message goes right from application layer, presentation, till the physical. So physical layer is the last layer which is actually carrying your data, and it is going to the application. If you can see, at every layer there is one block of data that is added, and at the receiver side that block of data is removed. So what are the blocks of data that we will be studying as we go ahead with the session? So here when I want to share some information, when I want to send some particular data, when I want to communicate, then here comes the role of an OSI model, or here comes the role of a computer networking. जैसे ये डेटा क्या हो सकता है, ये डेटा एक मेल हो सकता है, ये डेटा आपका एक फेसबुक पे पोस्ट हो सकता है, ये डेटा आपका एक फाइल हो सकता है जो आप शेयर कर रहे हो, ये डेटा हो सकता है कि आप इसको सिर्फ प्रिंट कर रहे हो फॉर सम स्पेसिफिक सर्विसेज, ये डेटा हो सकता है एक सर्वर जहाँ पे आप डेटा को रिट्रीव करने की कोशिश कर रहे हो, तो फिर दिस कैन बी अ सर्वर फ्रॉम वेयर यू ट्राइंग टू एक्सेस द डेटा, इट कैन बी एनी साइट ऑफ कम्युनिकेशन. So here, when such type of functions are there, you directly come up with the computer networking concepts. Okay. Now this was a very brief idea about OSI. Now let us just understand about the functions of OSI layers. Now I'm going to start with a very lower layer, that is physical layer. The reason I started with the physical layer is because this is the last layer in the networks which is actually responsible for sharing the data. मतलब क्या है? When in the application layer, I write some messages, like I write a message as hi. So what happens is my application layer will, or the layers below, like let me say presentation session, जो भी layers है, they will convert this H and I into some ASCII code or binary code, and they will start processing the data. What is happening is, from my application layer to my data link layer, मेरा डेटा पे सिर्फ प्रोसेस हो रहा है, मैं डेटा को सेंड या रिसीव कुछ नहीं कर रही हूँ. What is happening is I'm just processing the data. But actually, who is carrying my data to that destination is my physical layer. So physical layer is basically what? It can be any sort of cable. जैसे अगर आप एक coaxial cable use कर रहे हो, then that is nothing but your physical what you can say layer, which is actually responsible for carrying your data. Now, when I'm saying send and receive information, it is always in the form of signals, if I'm not wrong. It is always in the form of signals, whether it's an analog signal or whether it's a digital signal, right? But what is happening here is the data is completely in the form of ones and zeros. So what is the primary responsibility of my physical layer is जो भी messages आपको मिला है, like whatever, see, physical layer is not concerned with what data link or what the upper layers are doing. Data link layer has given it a specific packet with some specific bits of instruction. Physical layer क्या बोलता है that okay, what I'll do is I'll convert it into the signal, whichever type of signal you want me to convert, and what I will do is I will send this signal through what is my through channel which is connected to my destination. तो destination machine पे भी क्या होगा, अपना OSI model will be there, which is again going to understand, which will convert this. Okay, this is 1, this is 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0. So okay, it says that what is the message? This is the message that I have received. Now I'll start processing, or I'll do it reverse processing at my destination machine, and मेरा data word क्या था, सिर्फ 1010 था. So after this entire processing is done, for this the data it's 1010. Now give it to the destination. So here, what physical layer says is physical layer is responsible for converting the digital bits to signals. Because when I'm processing the data, I don't process it on the signals. Why? Because signals has a continuous data at the time intervals. At each time interval, it has some specific values. But digital, when I'm saying bits, at a specific time, it is either 1 or it is either a 0. And that's why we go for the processing of the digital bits. So here when I'm processing, my computer system works on the bits of ones and zeros, but when I actually want to send it, I have to send it as a form of a signal. So either I can send it as a form of an analog signal, or I can send it in the form of an digital signal. So here I have digital, so I'll convert it into the digital signal and I will set it into I'll float it on my cable. So whichever type of cable, like it can be a twisted pair, or it can be a coaxial cable, or it can be a fiber optic cable, any sort of cable that you're using, the signal, this signal that physical layer has converted, it will be floated on this type of cables. तो ये convert कैसे करते हैं हम लोग? How do we convert this data into signals is using a concept called as line coding. I hope you have heard this. It is called as line code. So line coding क्या है? It's basically a D to D converter. जैसे हमारे होते हैं A to A converter, we have A to D converter, we have D to A converter. Similarly, we have D to D converter. D means what? The input is also in the form of digital and output मुझे digital signal चाहिए. So it is digital bits to digital signal conversion, which is nothing but similarly a D to D converters I can use, and I can convert my signal here from signals symbols to signals. So once this is done, I need to have a proper synchronization, that is properly one by one, my data bits are getting converted into signals. So physical layer का main functionality क्या है? That you identify that जो भी packet में कितने bits है, what is the length of the bits. So according to that, you identify what is the speed of your cable. तो आपके पास data bits है, आपके पास speed of the cable है. Now you understand how much time it is going to take to reach to the destination and how much bandwidth it is going to. So जैसे मैंने एक example दिया है यहाँ पे, we always deal with bytes in the data. So 1 byte is equal to 8 bits. You must be knowing all these things. So I've just given a table over here, like how many bits of information will be equal to, in kilobits or bits. So 1024 is 1K bit, 1024 kilobit is 1 megabyte, and so on. So I will be taking this numericals tomorrow. So there is a data file of 128 kilobytes. Now what the network has to do is it has to identify like how much time will be taken by your network to reach it to the end. मुझे ये अगर फाइंड करना है, so what I need to know, ठीक है, मेरे पास डेटा जो है वो 128 किलोबाइट्स का है. So what is the speed of my cable? It is 1 Mbps. So now you tell me 1 Mbps के डेटा रेट के हिसाब से ये जो इंफॉर्मेशन है ये कितने टाइम में रीच होगा टू द डेस्टिनेशन. So I have to find out that. So using some calculations, I said it will take 1 second to reach the destination. So my 128 kilobyte of signal will take how much time to reach the destination is in 1 second. That depends on what? That depends on the speed of the cable or the speed of the okay. So these type of numericals I'll be solving. What is one drawback or the what you can say loop what you can say loophole in physical layer is इसमें थोड़ा delay हो सकता है, because let me say if the speed of the cable is not constant, if it is changing rigorously, then your times will also change. If you're taking more time to process the data, like conversion करने के लिए physical layer is taking more time, it can result in the delay of the signals. If there are already number of packets in the queue and if you're floating up the layer with more number of packets, it will not be able to process. So why the delay or why that loading effect comes in your screen is because of some of the reasons in the physical layer. That is some delays in the propagation, like speed being a proper, processing is not happening at a proper defined time. The transmission delay, like the signals are not transmitted at the same time. Then the timings when the speed of the cable is changing continuously, when the bandwidth is not constant, then there might be some transmission delays. And already, of course, if there are some previous packets already there in the path, in the storage, then they will be first tried to clear out. So, of course, when there are packets in the queue, then for your packet to get a time in the channel and then getting processed and then getting floated, of course, it is going to take some time. So these all parameters will cause a drift in the networks, that is a delay in computer networks, and because of which the screen might appear after some time on your screens. So this is one thing, but the maximum thing should be to reduce the speed. Okay. This is just a simple function of a physical layer. As I said, physical layer का इतना important function कुछ नहीं है. It is the last cable or the last layer which is actually dealing with the data to data transmission, and it is also taking care, of making it as work as a signal and calculating the time and everything. So the very basic function of physical layer. Now we are coming to the very important layer, that is data link. अभी ये important क्यों बोला मैंने? Because this is the last layer that is going to deal with the processing of your data. Means what? This is the layer on which I'm going to give my 100% assurance. मतलब क्या है? When the data link layer says that I am sending you the data physical layer, that means I am very much sure, confident that data link layer has tried to keep the data intact as it has been received from the receiver. मतलब उसमें कोई errors नहीं है. There is no sort of discrepancy in the data. There is nothing that has been wrong with the data. And now it's easy, it's very simple to send it to the physical layer, because physical layer के पास अपने खुद के ऐसे कुछ protocols नहीं है जो वो data को correct करेगा. Physical layer says only you give me the data bits, I'll convert it into signals, I'll send it. I am nowhere responsible with what is happening with that data, right? So here what is happening is, it is saying that you give me just that things, I will look after it. So data link layer पे बहुत ज़्यादा responsibility आती है when I'm coming to networks, because this is the layer which is going to say that 100% the data is right, 100% my data is right. So how data link layer says that, वो भी अगर कुछ बोल रहा है, then it is going to use some algorithms, and when it is 100% sure that the data is being processed properly, then only it is going to send to the physical layer. So, as I said that we have given some specific set of functions to everything. So, similarly, we have given some specific set of functions to data link layer also. So, data link layer का functions क्या है? Data link layer says that first and foremost, what is my responsibility? That I should not have any errors in my data. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll try to use some algorithms in my network. ये पूरा hardware based है. Okay. I'll try to use some algorithms in my networks which will take care that there should be no error data generated in the networks. और अगर गलती से generate हो भी गया, like if there is any errors that has been generated, then what you do is you correct those errors. Until and unless you don't correct that errors, don't make a data word and send it to the physical. Until and unless my algorithm says that the data, whatever has come, whatever I have done is right, till then you are not going to send the data to the next layer below. So इसके लिए what data link layer says that okay, I will do this. So to do this, I need to use some sort of algorithms. वो algorithms क्या करेंगे? It will check whether whatever you have received is error free or is it with error. If it is error free, then no questions. But if there is some sort of error, if your algorithm finds, it will use some sort of algorithm to correct, identify that error, so that your data link layer can rectify that, and then it will be concluded as an error-free data. Okay. Then comes with the flow control. Now, when I'm saying with the flow control, that means what? Let me say there is a user, okay, and I want to connect with the server. Now, server जो है मेरा 1 Gbps पे काम करता है, और मेरा system जो है वो 1 kbps या 10 kbps या 1 mbps पे काम करता है. Now, the speeds of these two systems are different. So what happens is, this is slow and this is fast. So what is happening if it is starting sending the packets, okay, and this is very fastly receiving the packets. So what happens is, it says that okay, you are sending a file. Now again I'm going to wait. So this is getting slow and this is getting fast. Or else on the other hand, this speed is, let me say, 1 Gbps, और मेरा जो दूसरा system है, it is, let me say, 1 Mbps. Now what is happening vice versa, and they are not matching the speeds. So what can happen is, either the packets will be lost or the packets will be denied in the networks. So to avoid this condition, what data link layer says is, I have to maintain a proper flow between two machines. Like either my source has to adjust with this speed or my destination has to adjust with this speed. अब ये आप लोग मैन्युअली नहीं करते हो, This is what automatically the machines will cope up with their standards, like this is the data speed limit of my device, so you have to adjust. The one who is faster has to adjust with the one who is on a slower. Okay, because I cannot increase the bandwidth of my system, but I of course can decrease. So what I'll do is I will go with what is the maximum data rate with which the other person or other machine can. So if I'm not using the function of flow control, what would happen is if I'm not using, then it's fine. What will happen? Just the packets will be lost, and again I have to ask my source to send the same packets one by one, and that goes on continuing, which is not recommended in the systems because it would again increase in the delay in the systems. So flow control is again an algorithm itself, which is implemented in the software code, like let me say using Java or using Python or using different languages. I'm going to implement this algorithm in my systems. And finally is the physical addressing. The very important addressing that is there in data link is it gives you the MAC address of the machines. Now, why addressing plays a very important role? Because let me say there is a house and in which there are four, or what you can say, or three machines in the system. And there is a router which is connected to my external internet services. Now, what is happening is, let me say this is first user who is requesting some XYZ page. This is some request who is requesting ABC. And this is a third user who is requesting some DEF website. So now what happens is when this particular user types something and hits enter, it is getting connected to my router and router is sending it to my external services, that is www. Now when this www server reaches to that particular server and gets the response to you, ये जो packet आया है for XYZ, it has to be delivered properly to this machine only and not to this and this. So how will my network identify that this is the device one who has requested for this particular page is using its physical address that is nothing but called as a MAC address. Is called as a MAC address of the machine. See, MAC address is always fixed. MAC address आप change नहीं कर सकते. MAC address is always fixed. The IP address is changed, but the MAC address is always remains fixed because this is done by the manufacturers when they are actually configuring your systems. Your laptops, your mobiles, every device has a MAC address, so it identifies you in this hundreds and lakhs and thousands of devices. So data link layer का prime responsibility ये है that whenever it sends something from outside, okay, this is my internal network and this is my external network. So when something is moving out of my internal network, your data link layer will give the MAC address of that machine who has requested this particular request. So on completion or when it receives that packet, it will be delivered to this MAC address properly. Okay, so what are the important algorithms that we have in data link here is error detection. Just check whether there is an error. If there is no error, fine. If there is any error, please correct that error and please. So we have different set of error detection algorithms which I'll be doing tomorrow in the numerical section. Yeah. Then after this, which are the protocols? Every layer has some specific protocols that they are using. So data link layer is using two protocols basically called as HDLC and PPP. So one, as I said, it is for broadcasting, okay, and one it is point to point. HDLC stands for high level data link control layer and PPP stands for point to point. So HDLC जो है आप point to point connection के लिए भी use कर सकते हो या आप broadcast अगर कुछ message है आप एक network में जो भी devices है आप सबको अगर एक message broadcast करना है you can go for HDLC protocol और अगर आपको one to one कुछ data send करना है you can go for point to point protocol only. But when I'm saying that I'm not going to switch between HDLC and PPP, then you can of course go for using the HDLC protocol. So they have their own frame formats. अगर आपको सबको broadcast करना है, the default address is 255. That means all 8 bits will be equal to 1. When this 8 bits destination address, when it's all equal to 1, that means it's 255. That means it's a broadcast message. That means it's a broadcast message. Else, if you want to give a point-to-point address, then what it says is, okay, the destination address is something, let me say, the IP address end is 179 or 192. So this is what is the IP address of that particular machine or the host address of that particular machine. So उसका IP address जो है वो हम लोग ऐसे so what is happening to send the devices in एक नेटवर्क में अगर मुझे सबको एक साथ मैसेज सेंड करना है I'll go my data link here says that use HDFC अगर किसी एक को ही सेंड करना है तो आप पॉइंट टू पॉइंट यूज कर सकते हैं. So what are the main other concepts that OSA layer says or data link layer says is the framing, ARQ, collision avoidance mechanisms and everything. It's okay in the interviews if you just name this, they are not going to brief you on anything. So MAC address, if you want to find out the MAC address of your machine, you can simply ping, you can just type ping and you will get the MAC address of your machines. Okay. Next is the network layer. Network layer, as I said, is the heart of the OSI model because all the main functionalities of your networks happens in the network layer. So what are the main functionalities of network layer? This is a very famous question in any interviews. So network layer deals with basically routing. Routing is what? Like every router, like ये user है and ये destination user है, इसके बीच में बहुत सारे routers होंगे. So how that data has to be transmitted, that everything, every instructions will be given by this particular routing method. So routing says that there are 4 ways in which you can reach to the destination. Out of this, first way is taking 10 seconds, second way is taking 3 seconds, third way is taking somewhere around 15 seconds, and fourth way is taking somewhere around 20 seconds. So now my algorithm has to say that, okay, this is the minimum one. So you send the data using the second way to the destination machine. So routing is a very important concept when you come to the networking. It identifies the shortest path to reach to the destination node. इससे क्या होगा आपका total जो time है to reach to the destination will be reduced. And finally is the logical addressing. Logical is nothing but the IP addressing. So IP addressing, as I said, in a home there were 3 devices, right? ये 3 devices में device एक आपने identify किया using MAC. Now when the router is connected to, let me say, this particular home, so इसका जो IP address है, IP में ये MAC है. तो IP address को मैं कैसे identify करती हूँ using this IP addressing, which is present in the packets that has been received or sent from that particular node. So network layer deals with what? With the IP addresses, and data link layer deals with what? The MAC addresses. And finally the packet delivery. That means what? आपका जो भी मैसेज है उसको मैं प्रॉपर पैकेट्स में कन्वर्ट करके आई विल सेंड. For example, when you write Google on the browser, I am sure you must have seen it appears something like this. So what is happening is I'm dividing all this individual entire sequence into individual packets, and then I'm working individually on GOOGLE data. Okay. There are various routing methods. That is, one is static and one is dynamic. That means once the route is finalized, it's finalized. Otherwise, there is another way. In every time when the router is updating itself, your table gets updated and you can get the message to reach to the destination. There are various algorithms used. Tomorrow we'll be solving the numericals on which it will be very much clear. जैसे मैंने बोला डेटा लिंक लेयर के प्रोटोकॉल्स होते हैं, वैसे नेटवर्क लेयर के भी प्रोटोकॉल्स होते हैं. So what is the main protocol we are using in network layer is IPv4, IP version IP protocol. So here also we are using IPv4 or IPv6, and in that, along with that, we are using some supporting protocols that we'll be discussing tomorrow again. These all numericals are there, so I'll be discussing it one by one tomorrow itself. Many other functionalities include, जैसे एक layer में एक ही function नहीं होता है, we have many functions. So along with this, they have another functions like congestion, inter-networking, like traffic कितना है, BGP, OSPF, inter-networking है या intra-networking है. All these functionalities will be taken care by the network layer itself. Coming to the next layer, that is transport layer. Transport layer deals with 2 types of services. One is connectionless. That means, let me say you're just browsing some internet just to what? To browse some images or pictures or something. one steady. And the second type of service what you want to do is connection oriented. That means जब आप कोई भी एक login करते हो, sign in करते हो, then you are sharing your credentials and that should be safe and securely transmitted. जैसे banking applications हो गया, Facebook pages हो गया, Instagram, where you are adding your credentials, that is connection oriented. So transport here deals with two types of services. One is connectionless and one is connection oriented. So what they are doing is this is basically socket address. Socket address is basically what? एक ही system में आप बहुत सारे tabs open करते हो. On first tab you have Amazon, on second tab you have Myntra, on third tab you have Facebook. So when you are requesting all these three pages, so you're going to get three packets here. So ये पैकेज जो है ये Amazon के पेज पे रिफ्लेक्ट होना चाहिए, ये जो है ये Myntra के पेज पे रिफ्लेक्ट होना चाहिए, फेसबुक वाले पेज पे रिफ्लेक्ट होना चाहिए. So all these things is taken care using the socket addresses, the port numbers basically, and then the final packet delivery. Main task what is there, as I said, you have to identify whether you need a connectionless or a connection oriented service. You should be responsible for end to end and you should be able to understand at which protocol. जैसे हमारे नेटवर्क एंड डेटा लिंक लेयर में प्रोटोकॉल्स थे, वैसे ही हमारे ट्रांसपोर्ट लेयर में टू प्रोटोकॉल्स है, दैट इज टीसीपी एंड यूडीपी. TCP stands for connection oriented and UDP stands for connection less protocol. Okay. So this is socket switching, basically socket programming that we try to do. Client server connection happens in transport layer. Session layer, as you know, session and presentation doesn't have much of importance. You have logged in and you have given three wrong attempts. So now your whatever application will be there will be locked for some amount of duration. So all this type of care is taken care by your session layer. Like if you have logged in and after 30 minutes you are idle, you are not using anything. And after 30 minutes when you come and you just try to use that services, it asks you to re-log in. So who is taking care that this person is not using the internet? So what we'll do is we'll try to give it to some other user who is trying to access the services. Like you will be considered as a dead node in the network and the services will not be given to you. But as soon as you try to use the services, the connections will be resumed. So that all type of services like dialog control karo, download karte waqt, I'm downloading a movie and it has been stuck in between because I have lost my Wi-Fi connection. So as soon as I again regain my Wi-Fi connection, I do not need to start it from first. I need to start it from the point where my download was paused. So all this type of care is taken care by your session layer. Presentation layer is basically how you present your data. Like as I said, आपका जो भी डेटा रहता है आपको तो उसको ट्रांसलेट करना पड़ता है in the form of ones and zeros. Application layer doesn't deal with all these things. Application layer says कि HTTP use कर रहा है, SMTP use कर रहा है, or it is using the FTP, or it is using some different type of protocol. It will not do any type of conversion. Who converts, who starts with the processing of data is the presentation layer. So presentation layer, it receives something in the form of alphanumeric, जैसे hi, hello, ऐसे कुछ receive करता है. So now presentation layer will convert it in the form of ones and zeros. And what happens is when I'm converting one bit of data and it is, let me say, reflecting in 8 bits. So the size of data is going to increase. So I'm going to use some compression algorithms, जैसे Huffman coding हो गया या फिर LZW compression हो गया या फिर I'm compressing the size of my image. All these things I'll try to reduce the size of my image because jitna small रहेगा size of the data, that much fast the data will be sent to the destination. So these two things will be taken care by your presentation layer. And application layer deals with the protocols, like which protocol the user wants to do, and it deals with the encryption of this because SSL, SSH जो होता है, it is already coded in this protocols. So that is what is the application layer. So I hope that after understanding all these things, tomorrow we'll be discussing on when a user enters XYZ on a page, what are things? This is a very famous interview question. Like they give you an example that I am typing some xyz.com. तो अभी पता OSI layer में क्या क्या होता है. So that we'll be discussing tomorrow. Like if I'm typing something and how the OSI layer functions. This is a very important and most famous question in the industries. This is just a summary that I've tried to put up of the layers. So application layers, it allows to access network resources. प्रेजेंटेशन में आपके 3 important functions है, translate, encrypt and compress the data. सेशन के important functions होते हैं, you establish a connection, manage a connection and terminate. Transport says end to end proper connection दे दो. Network says move from source to destination properly. Data says organize bits properly, and physical says that carry these bits easily. So this is networking devices. I'll be discussing something tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll be also going up with the concepts on the numericals. Whatever protocols I have said, that we'll be discussing. Today, what we have studied, main concepts is about application protocols, routing, submitting, etc. So that is it from my side for today. Now, all the students who are present, I have just created just a questionnaire. So this is a link. You can just scan this QR and you will be redirected to that particular questionnaire. So I request everyone to please give this. Apart from this, if anyone have any questions or any queries, you can please post it in the chat section. I'll be here to solve your queries. But I guess as an introduction part for today, we are okay with this much. Tomorrow, I'll be just highlighting you on the protocols and we'll be directly going to the numerical. And day after tomorrow, that is the last day, I'll be guiding you on the security part of the network. But these all things, what I have said, is very important basic networking that they will be asked in any interview questions. Okay. Any questions, anyone? This is a quick QR code. You can please scan it. You will be redirected to that page. You can just solve that questionnaire and you can submit your responses. Okay. Ma'am, I'm done with my today's session. Any questions, any difficulties, if anyone has, if anyone wants to ask anything about the initial part that I have discussed, you can please send me your queries at this particular mailing address, vinita.bandiwag@vit.edu. You can officially communicate with me at this particular email address. Thank you. I have tried to give you a very brief insights about this domain and clear with the very basic concept of the OSI model required in any industry to get into as a network engineer or a security engineer. You need to know the OSI model correct. So I think I have given you a very quick insights and a very brief introduction about this. Thank you, everyone.